Hi, my friends. So I'm in a noisy apartment building. This is like the third time I've started this video, so we're just gonna live with the noise. There's noise in the hall, so I don't know if it's carrying on to the microphone anyway. We'll live with it unless it gets really horrible. And also the little click, click, click noise is my dog walking around. You can kind of see Jack walking around back there. So I want to do some more shorter videos because a lot of my videos are just kind of complicated, complex, legal subjects that require more lengthy explanations and stuff. But there's a lot of just tidbits that can be shorter videos. So instead of like a fireside chat, this is my kitchen side chat. And I'll just kind of blab on some tips that I think might be helpful to you, in particular as tenants. So I used to be a property manager. I managed an apartment building, and then I retired, and I was the apartment manager for about 8 years, and 25 apartments I managed in a building, and I lived in the building. And so, and I have a background in real estate. I had a real estate license at one point a million years ago, and I've bought and sold my own properties and that kind of thing. So I have a bachelor's in law, and one of the subjects we had to study was real estate law. So I have a clue, and I know that like, for instance, the California landlord tenant law, because I'm a law nerd and I was in property management, and so I learned the landlord tenant law. A lot of landlords don't, and they just kind of wing it and bluff, and you all know that as tenants if you're watching this as a tenant. So I wanted to talk today about why you don't have to worry about a landlord giving you a bad reference. Tenants are so worried about that. They're so worried about that to the point where even in a property like this, and if you watched my video about LIHTC properties, which is the kind of property that I'm in, low-income housing, tax credit property, they can't kick you out except for cause, which is nearly impossible to do. So, but tenants who are thinking they don't want to live here forever, they're going to want to maybe move and apply for another apartment somewhere else sometime, they're concerned about getting a good landlord reference, and so they don't complain about anything. And landlords, God bless the good ones, but I will say the vast majority of landlords are not people of necessarily really high integrity or honest with their tenants. They tend to use the fact that tenants don't know their rights or their laws, and they use these kinds of fears, which landlords are very aware of, to control their tenants. That's just reality. There are, of course, there are wonderful managers. I was one of them. I was very honest, and I dealt very forthrightly with people. People usually know if they're screwing up. They know it. You just have to sit down and say, we got a problem, and it's my job to take care of it, and let's figure out something so that you don't get evicted, and I don't have to give you a bad reference, or whatever. So you can deal fairly and honestly, and and with respect to people. Even good people screw up, so there's no reason to treat them like they're less than human. Anyway, I could go off on that. So I have a problem with bad landlords. So let me just tell you why you don't have to worry about a landlord giving you a bad reference. And the main reason is because they are generally, in a giant majority, going to cover their own rears and their own profits first above all else. And now, if they want to get rid of you, why would they give you a bad reference when someone calls? Say you're still living in that apartment, and and you've applied to move in with me, for instance, and I call, and do you really think that person on the other side who wants to get rid of you is going to say, "Oh, he's horrible, don't rent to him"? Right? No, they want to get rid of you. So they may just go ahead and say, no, everything's fine. Probably they're going to want to cover their rear enough. They've maybe been told by, the corporate America, or if you're talking about like a corporate apartment building kind of thing, or a landlord who's been to some seminars and maybe spoken to attorneys or been to seminars where attorneys give them, who make landlords afraid of slander and libel lawsuits, because even though they may know you can't afford a lawyer, they also know that there are free lawyers for poor people, and it's called fair housing, right? They don't want to get sued. They don't want to be in a position where they're going to get sued. So even if it's true that you were a terrible tenant, by saying that, they open themselves up to the possibility that you might go to fair housing and say, this guy's discriminating, he's making it impossible for me to find another place. He's now if he's not telling the truth, it's slander or libel. But you can still end up in court. Like, even if they know that if you bring a lawsuit, you would be lying if you said that it wasn't, true, what he's saying is true, they still end up in court. They don't want to go to court. Even if they know they'll win, they have to pay a lawyer. And they end up in front of a judge who, could start to get an attitude about them when they come in to evict, someone in eviction court, or just out there in the, apartment community, review land. They mostly it's about money. So for one, they're not going to screw themselves by saying, oh no, he's a great tenant, or he's a terrible tenant, if they want to get rid of you. Why would they do that? Because then the guy's not going to rent to you and they're stuck with you, okay? And then two, if there's the remotest chance that you might go to fair housing and sue them, even if they know they'll win, it still means it costs them money to go to court to fight you. So they don't do it. They don't give bad references. They'll make you think they will because they want to control you that way, but they won't really do it. I mean, 1 out of a gajillion, and it would have to be some solo landlord, with an attitude who doesn't mind going to court. But I mean, the odds of that are so slim, especially if you're in a corporate type apartment building, owned by somebody, managed by some other company. No way. So when I was calling around for references, what would happen is, this is the standard response now. There is no camaraderie. There's no like club of, dude with is that kind of a non-cool thing for an old lady to say, dude? But anyway, there's not like this good old boy camaraderie where they protect each other. Landlords, they don't care about each other. They're not going to say, hey, don't rent to this guy because he's a pain, and put themselves in a bind, but do it anyway because they want to make sure that the other guy doesn't get hurt by the same terrible tenant they had. They don't care about each other. So don't even think that either. Like they're all pals out there and they're going to protect each other. They'll make you think that maybe, but it is not going to happen. So what happens is when I, I would always call for references. Here's another point. You hardly ever get called. So hardly any of them will actually call and check your references. They just go by credit reports, eviction reports. They might check on employment, income, those kinds of things. But I swear, I was a manager for, like I say, around 8 years. I managed 25 apartments. I got called for a reference less than a handful. In all that time and that many tenants, hundreds. And literally less than 5 landlords ever called me for a reference, ever. So for one, that's the other thing, they just don't actually do it. Okay, so here's how the phone call goes. So I would call and ask for a reference. The first thing they say back to me is, send us a fax on your letterhead with that, requesting that information. Well, I worked for just two brothers who owned a bunch of apartment buildings in the Bay Area, and they didn't have a letterhead. They were just two old guys, and they just had their little private solo, self-employed real estate business, but there was no letterhead or anything like that. So I'd be like, well, we don't have any letterhead. Can I just send you an email? And I would say, well, here's my Yelp business, and you can see that it's my name and my phone number. So if you just want to verify that I'm really a property manager, you can see my Yelp business page, and so I could get around it that way. But that's what the first thing they do is send us a request in writing by fax on your letterhead. They probably don't fax anymore, but anyway, that was back in, I was a manager until 2013. So then back 8 years when I started doing that. So I ended in 2013 as a manager. So, and then the other thing, and then what you'll finally get out of them is, all they will say is, because one of the questions you ask is, would you rent to them again? Because they'll like the kind of information that they'll give is, if I say, would you rent to them again, they will say, if he, she, them qualified, then we would rent to them again. If they qualified, what does that mean? Does that mean they go back in the file and see that they were paying and therefore they didn't qualify to come back? What, that doesn't mean anything. It just tells you zero. They will tell you the length of your tenancy. So they'll say, that they were here from 2000, October 2000 whatever to whatever, the dates of your tenancy. And I couldn't even get them to give me information about whether or not you paid your rent on time. I can't remember anybody being willing to give me that information. So, even if you get a reference, their standard line, and they must teach this in seminars now, because I swear I called a ton of them all over the place, and they got the same, like, word for word, if they qualified, we would gladly rent to them again, which tells you zero. So I'm telling you, don't worry about it. Don't be afraid of a bad reference, because they won't do it. They don't want to have to pay for an attorney. They're cheap. They're all about profit. They're just not going to put themselves in a situation. And if you use the magic fair housing word, which is 2 words, they don't want to have to deal with paying for an attorney. It's too expensive for them. They're not going to deal with that. So they're just going to tap dance and say you were here between this time and this time, and if you qualified, they'd rent to you again, and that's it. It really is. So don't worry about it. So this video ended up longer than I thought it would be, but hopefully it was good information. I tend to go on, and I get upset with unscrupulous landlords. It just makes me unhappy. So I am definitely a tenant that they wish never moved into their building, because I exert my rights. I mean, I'm not like constant pain in the rear, but if they ask me to do something that I know I don't have to do and I don't think it's right, I just won't. And I've been actually, I've had my management here, they're like, why don't you just move? Like, literally, they've actually asked me that. And I laugh, and I'm like, I have a good deal. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me, so you might want to fix the elevator, or, whatever. Because I'm going to start complaining to the state commission and to everybody else commissions and whatever. So I'm not afraid to complain, and I know that they won't give me a bad reference. So, you're really in the power seat. Unless you're in a housing situation where they can just kick you out because they don't like you anymore. And that is the case in a lot of places. But if you're in subsidized housing with government subsidies, I can't think of one example where you would not have that protection, where they can't kick you out except for cause. So I hope that was helpful. I hope it relieved some people who are worried about that. You know, that's my mission, is to help you out. So please like, subscribe, and leave comments. Tell us your stories, and ask questions, and you know, if you have ideas for other videos you'd like me, you know, other subjects you'd like me to cover, that'd be fantastic, and I'd appreciate it. And you know, have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.